This chutz of our learning should be a panacea. Daf Chaf Aleph, Halacha Aleph. The Mishnah says, "Kol ha'reikin v'nimtzaim b'Yerushalayim tahirim chutz mishal shukei elyon." Reik means spittle. It could be tummy. Reik could be tummy. Spit could be tummy, because it could be that it comes from zav, and the spit of a zav. All the mayanas, all the fountains, all the fluids that come from a zav are tummy. So, do you assume that if there's spit on the floor, that it came from a zav? So we say no. In Yerushalayim, we assume that everyone is tar, except Mishuka Elyon, except from this upper marketplace. That we don't assume that it's tar. We'll see why. The Reb Meir. That's what Reb Meir says. Reb Yosi says, actually there's another girsa that says, Reb Yosi says, it depends on the season. If it's the rest of the year, not the holidays, so then shebe'emtza, in the middle of the street where that's most of the people are, then tmeyim. Over there, the spit would be tamei. Shebetzadim, but if it's on the side of the street, then tahirim, then it would be tar. I guess the assumption is, as the Gemara will explain, that people aren't so careful to make themselves pure during the year. It's only for the holidays that they need to be pure. So if they're not pure, okay, whatever. So if that's the case, then where did the majority of people walk? In the center? And they possibly aren't pure. However, on the side of the street, that's where the people would be, the people that want to stay away from everyone else. They would walk on the side. That would be the pure. However, this switches by the holiday. B'shas regel, for the holiday season, then shebe'emtza tahirim shebestadim tmeim. Around the holiday season, everyone is pure. So most of the people are going to walk in the center of the street. Anyone that's tamei is going to be standing off to the side. So therefore, any spit that would be found on the side, that would be tamei during the holiday season. Because the minority would always go to the side. We try to avoid the crowd. In those days, the mikveh had an entrance and an exit. Yeah. One way in, one way out. That's the way they do it for big crowds. There's some mikvahs like that, and even in Crown Heights. You go in this way, you're coming from the shower, you go in this way, and then you go out the other way to the towels or something. Because otherwise, if you don't do it like that, then the tummy and the tar could bang into each other on the way. That wouldn't be good, right? The guy just went to the mikveh, comes out, and he touches someone that's tummy. So you have one side tahar, and one side is the entrance would be the tamei, and the other side is tar. So if you find the utensils, so if you find them on the way into the mikveh, then they're probably tamei. If you find them on the way out of the mikveh, then they're probably tar. You follow? Makes sense. Okay. Reb Meir. Reb Yosi says no. Kulam tayrim. Chutz min asal v'amagrefa v'amritza amyuchadim l'kvaris. Reb Yosi says, are we talking about in Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim, everything is probably tar. Unless you find utensils that are used by people by the Chaver Kadisha, the grave diggers, you find those things, then that's a different story. But in general, Kalim and Yerushalayim are going to be tar. Sakin shenimtzes b'yudalet sheichet ba'miyad. If you find a knife, that you would be allowed to keep, are you allowed to use it to shecht, or do you have to put it in the mikveh, thinking that maybe it's tamei? You want to use it to shecht the karba. So if you find it on the 14th of Nisan, then you assume that whoever owned it had already toiveled it on the 13th and waited for nightfall. Now it's tahar, and on the 14th you can use it to shech. If you find it on the 13th, then you have a problem, because it could be the owner of it wanted to be toivel it later that day, and he didn't get around to it. You found it before it was toivel it. So if you find it on the 13th, you have to be toivel it. Kupitz. Kupitz is a type of knife that's not normally used for shechita. It could be used for shechita, but normally it's used to chop bones. To chop the rest of the butcher uses this knife. So the Korban Pesach, the bones you don't break the bones in the Korban Pesach, but the rest of the holiday you do have other sacrifices where you use that sort of knife. So what's going on here? You found a kupitz, this sort of knife. If you find it on Yud Daled, if you find it on the 13th, for sure it could be it's a cleaver. If you find it on the 13th, for sure there's a problem. Even a knife on the 13th is a problem. Maybe the person was going to take it to the mikveh that day and he didn't get a chance, and you just found it. But even if you found it on the 14th, could be that later that day, the guy wants it for the 15th and the 16th. He wants it to be tar. So the only thing is, on the 14th, he doesn't have to toivel it in the morning. He could toivel it anytime before Shkia. You found it on the 14th, sometime in the afternoon or in the morning. Could be you found it before the guy took it to the mikveh. If that's the case, then you have to take it to the mikveh now. So the Mishnah says, you have to take it to the mikveh now, whether it was on the 13th or the 14th. Interesting scenario. Yeah, that was this year. If the 14th was Shabbos. So he can't be toivel it on Shabbos. You're supposed to be toivel kelim on Shabbos. Probably was toivel it on the day before. So then, shechet b'miyad. You can check with it. Why? Because he probably was toivel it already. You don't have to bring it to the mikveh. The tesvav, let's see, you find it on the 15th. Then shechet b'miyad, you can use it to shech straight away. What are you shechting on the 15th? So the karbanos shlamim, elasriya, whatever karbanos. If someone goes to the base of Mikdash, he doesn't come empty-handed. He has karbanos, so he's allowed to use this kupitz to shech. It probably wasn't normally used to shech, but this is what he has. He can use it. Nimtza kshur l'sakin. If you find it like on a keychain, he has his shechita knife and he has his kupitz there. So then harei kasak, and then it would have the halachas of the knife. And the knife he needed for Yud Daled. So if you find it on Yud Daled, it's already tahar, because he probably was toivel it on the 13th. You see, everything that you toivel needs to have herib shemesh before. It needs to have nightfall. You toivel it, you wait for nightfall, and then it becomes permissible. So it needs to be toiveled on the 13th. Then it would be ready for the 14th. Okay, we discussed in the beginning of the Mishnah different areas of Yerushalayim. We said that there's a place called Sheika Elyon, where over there it could be that people were tamei, and the spit over there would be tamei. Rabbi Avin b'shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Avin says the name of Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Katzon shel Nachrim hayasham. Maybe Katzon shel Zavin. Katzon shel Nachrim. There's different versions here, but what this would mean is two possibilities, two interpretations. One is Katzron means that it's a laundromat, a non-Jewish laundromat, launderers, and they were not Jewish. Now the sages instituted that non-Jewish people have the similar tumah to a zav. So therefore, because that's where the non-Jews had their marketplace, so therefore, if there was spit there, it would have the same status as the spit of a zav. Other pshat is that it means a fortress. It was a non-Jewish fortress. Yeah, I would have to see if there were archaeological evidence for that. Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Chanina says, "Areides hayanaychem b'Yerushalayim." an araid is a wild donkey, and they would kill these araidas. Neichem just means they would pierce them. It means they would like shoot them or something. They would kill these animals, and the commentaries here say that they would use the meat for the lions of the king. I don't know if that means he kept lions in a cage for some reason, or maybe it was some sort of circus. And so they would use this meat for these lions, and they when they would kill them, there would be a lot of blood. The people that would go up to the base of Migdash, there would be blood up to their ankles from these donkeys. Yeah.
I wonder if the Kotzrin is the Antonia fortress.
Oh, that's interesting. In the Steinsaltz may have a comment. It would be a Steinsaltz type of comment. Does it say anything about if the fortress was the Antonia fortress? Yitzi says that was his question. Yeah, I don't know the area, but when was that fortress from?
Well, it was built originally by Yochanan Harkanos.
Oh, really? Oh, so that would go back to this time. Our discussion yesterday about the Kohen Gadol's mincha, he dies, and there's another, the next one. That was an issue during that second temple period where there were Kohanim that was changing all the time. So that was that was the second temple stories. So here, yeah, if it goes back so far, then that could be the fortress. A lot of the things are from the Crusades. A lot of the things that we see. Okay. Yeah, it could be a laundromat. Or the detergent. So, they asked the sages, the sages didn't tell them if they're tamei. They said, look, we're going up, we have dead carcass, these animals are there, the blood is on the floor, a nevela gives off tumah, and they're going to the base of Migdash. This could create a problem. But they're not touching the nevela, they're touching the blood. So the sages said, oh, blood, don't worry about it. They didn't say anything about the blood. All right? Reb Shimon be'araba b'shem Reb Chanina katzin shel Nachman yisem. Okay, I'm not sure how that comes in. That was probably supposed to be before. Reb Shimon b'shem Reb Yeshua ben Levi. The following Gemara we had before in Shekalim, and for some reason it's repeated in its entirety, like right here. So he says like this: Ma'aseh b'perda Michel Beis Rebbe Shemesa. A story of a mule, the house of Rebbe, from Rebbe, that the mule died. And they said that the blood is pure. It doesn't have the status of nevela. When we mentioned this before, we were discussing that nevela is metama with the size of a kazayas. Size of a kazayas of a nevela. Blood that's a revius, when it congeals, it becomes a kazayas. When we were discussing, is a revius of blood considered the size of a kazayas that should give off the same tumor, just like the flesh should give off? That was our discussion. So what happened was they said that this blood was tahar, it was pure, it wasn't considered the flesh. Rabbi Eliezer, Shal Rabbi Simon at Kama. How much blood would be tamei? V'loi agive. I don't remember that word before. It means he didn't answer him. Remember this? Remember the story? Shal Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So he asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Amalei ad revius tar yasim mikan tamei. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that it depends how much. If it's a revius, then it's really tamei. Now, Ubash l'Rab Lezer d'leichazale l'Rab Simon Shmuasa. Rab Lezer was upset was annoyed that Reb Simon did not answer him when he asked. Okay, Rabbi was sitting. Masni Adeinovdi was saying over the story. Amalei Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna Ad Kama. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna asked him how much blood would be tamei. Amalei Ad Revius Tar. Up until a Revius would be tahar. Mikan, yes, Mikan is tamei. More than that is tamei. Ubat, and he kicked him. So Amalei Reb Zrika says, begin the Havishalach at Barpe. He asked you a question, you kick him. This was the Gemara. If you didn't remember it until now, so this is Amalei. Begin the lay have a die to be. My mind isn't settled. Rav Chanan says, your life will be hanging. This is in the curses over there. This is someone that doesn't have his own fields. He has to buy produce for the year. Costco. He has to shop in Costco. He buys a lot for the in bulk. And you'll be afraid by day and by night. This is someone that has to buy retail. You can't trust your life. This is someone that has to buy every day bread. He doesn't know he's going to have for tomorrow. He has to buy every day fresh. And I have to rely on the baker. In other words, he just has a few coins to be able to buy every day what he needs. So that's why I wasn't settled. That's why I kicked him. My Kadon, what comes out from this? What's the end? Hey, Rabbi Yeshua ben Peseira al dam nevel shutar. Rabbi Yeshua ben Peseira said, maybe it's Rabbi Yeshua ben Peseira. It says Peseira, that the blood of a nevela is of a dead animal is tahar. Mahu tar. What did he mean tahar? When it says tar melahachsher, totally different story. It's not talking about giving off tumah. It's talking about that there are 7 liquids, and those liquids make food susceptible to tumah. Grain, they make it susceptible to tumah if it gets wet. As we wash our hands before we dip. So, what are those liquids? Well, one of them is blood, but that blood is only blood from shechita. It says v'shachat damai. Says something about kamayim, that it's only the blood that comes out by the shechita that's considered a liquid that could make something susceptible to tumah. Other blood is not considered a liquid. So here we're saying that it's tar melahachsher, but forget about the halatamais mitame. It's not considered a liquid, but it's still considered a nevela. So it makes tamei. Exactly the opposite of what we thought when we read it the first time. Taman Taninan, over there it says, it's the Gemara has a question. 1 second. Dama sheretz mitame kibasarai. The sheretz, that means the blood of a creeping creature, gives off impurity just like its flesh. Mitame vena machsher, it gives off the impurity, but it doesn't make it susceptible to tumah. In other words, it's not considered a liquid, it's considered a food, which will give off tumah. It's considered the salad, rather, not the food. It's considered a salad, which gives off tumah. The sheretz, the flesh of the sheretz gives off. The sheretz gives off the tumah, and the blood also gives off the tumah, but it doesn't make other things susceptible because it's not considered a liquid. But the problem is the Mishnah finishes but we have nothing similar to it, which means that if we have nothing similar to the sheretz, that means that you can't tell me that a dead mule, the blood is going to give off tumah, but doesn't make it susceptible. You can't tell me that. Why? Because we said that's the case by a sheretz, and there's nothing similar to a sheretz. Yeah, I don't know if that makes a difference. Right. And the sheretz? Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like frogs and lizards and those types of things. But they have to have something going around. right? Something's got to bring the nutrients around. Uh-huh. Well, halachically, it's not blood. I mean, blood, like the prohibition to eat blood. They have something there. Ve'in lanu ki yetzi by kishir to masay. The Gemara says that contrast that you just made, that there's nothing similar to the sheretz, that wasn't talking about that its blood is tamei and it's not considered a liquid. That's not what it means. That means that there's nothing similar to a sheretz because a sheretz gives off tama from the size of a bean. Because we remember we spoke about the lizard eggs. They're the size of a bean. So the sheretz has a very small share of tama. And that's why we say nothing is similar to it. But the animal, although it's not similar to the size because it needs to be a kazayas, but it will still give off tama, the blood of a nevela, of the dead animal, and the blood is not considered a liquid. At the size of a revius, it will give off tama. Rabbi Yasi, Rabbi Yasi says there's a machlekes amirayim. Chad amar tamei v'chad amar tar. One says that the blood is tamei, one says the blood is tar. We're talking about of the dead animal. Manda amar tamei, the one that says tamei, Rabbi Yehuda. It's following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Manda amar tar, Rabbi Shua ben Pesaira. One that says tar is Rabbi Shua ben Pesaira. Amalei Rabbi Abduma the Menachus of Yas. He says this makes sense to Rabbi Yehuda Marina the Ben Siyava. The one that said Tameh is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and the reason why by Rabbi Yehuda, Anasi, it's not Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, we said over there that the blood was only tahar because it was less than a kazayas. It was less than a revius, which means that when it dries, it's less than a kazayas. But if it would have been more than a revius, it would have been tameh. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that says that it's tameh. And Rabbi Yehuda was the paisik for the house of the Nasi. Okay. Marina the Ben Siyava. Kala Reiken, we mentioned about the spit. Leikin Amar Rabavo b'shem Rabbi Yasi bar Chanina. Rabavo in the name of Rabbi Yasi bar Chanina didn't say this. Didn't. Like Gazra al Reiken Shabishalayim. He said that there's nothing that's tamei in Yerushalayim. Says no, he didn't know about what was going on up there in the Shekalim, and that over there was this laundromat, the non-Jews were there, and over there it was tamei. That's why he said what he said. But or maybe when he said it, it wasn't there. What the Mishnah says that it's tamei, that's because of that fortress at the laundromat. Shibolis means in the center, but does the Steinsaltz have a comment on why it's called Shibolis? Shibolis sounds like a stalk of wheat, like the commentaries say that Shibolis means the center. He says the whole year, the Gemara says, the impure people walk in the center. The pure people walk on the side. Social distancing, right? Yeah, someone said, we could tell that it's European or something. He walks in the middle of the street. You can tell someone's nationality or something. They walk on the side. They don't have the same confidence. Okay, that's not what it means over here. The confidence here, it has to do with the amount of people. So because majority of people would be tamei, so they would walk in the center. The Hayrim Halchim Natzad. Okay, now the text over here is a little corrupted, and the Gra switches things around. I'll read it from the text, but I'll tell you what the Hayrim Halchim Stam, according to the Gra, would be the Tameim just walk around regularly, and but Tameim Ma'imrim Prushu, according to the Gra, would be, and the Tahirim tell them, he switches it, that they should distance themselves. Shasa Regel, but on the holidays, Hatayr Malchim, Shibailas, the pure people walk in the center because everyone is pure. But the impure people have to walk on the side because they want to get away from the people that they want to make the people impure. The Tmeim would walk regular, really means the Torah would walk regular, but and not the Torah people, but the Tummy people would tell the Torah people to be careful because we're Tummy. Okay. Any vessels that are found in Yerushalayim, we said that they're tar. We said it depends. They're going down to the mikveh, then they're going to be tamei. Going up from the mikveh, then they're going to be tar. Okay. Doesn't it say that Rabbi Bo said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that kelim in Yerushalayim are tar? The Gemara says, yeah, normally kelim are tar, but here there's a problem. Why do you find it in the mikveh? If it's so tar, what was it doing in the mikveh? It must be that it must have had a problem. Now, where in the mikveh did you find it? Oh, you found it on the way down. Oh, that's the real problem. On the way out, it would be back to the regular status of everything else. Now, one of the instruments that we said over here, according to Rabbi Yossi, everything was tar except for the magreif and the maritzin. These are shovels and like rakes that the grave diggers do. Remember that we learned this before, that there was a tradition to bury people temporarily. They would dig up the bones after the bone. They bury them in the ground, and after the flesh would decay, then they would take out the bones and they would put them in a cave. That was a tradition. So anyway, the grave diggers would have to take out those bones, and they would use shovels and rakes. So one version was that they would call these rakes tziparin, which means nails. Mandamar tziparin shudaymo tziparin was similar to nails. It was probably like sharp or could scratch the surface. Mandamar maritza, we learned in our Mishnah that it's called a maritza. What's it called maritza? Shemaritza seven lebesa kvaris, because it was used to move the stone. They would use a stone maybe to cover over where they would keep they would make a niche in the cave, and they would put the bones into that like little hollow. What is it? Oh yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know that. Dr. Stein says that the Rambam says, quoted by Dr. Stein, that the maritza was a hammer that would break the bones that didn't fit in. Yeah, it's a little surprising, no? I would be surprised that that would be a tradition. I mean, it could happen, but that there should be a bone breaking instrument. Okay. That what? Oh, they take the stones to cover over the hollow. Kupits, we spoke about this knife that we called the cleaver. It was a knife that was used to break bones. Tanya sakin kshurla ariya kamaisa. The Brisa says, the Mishnah said that if you have both knives on your keychain, so you have they're attached one to the other, so you have the sakin was already tahar on the 14th. The kupitz wasn't going to be tahar on the 14th; it would only be tahar on the 15th because that's when you would put it in the mikvah. But now that it's attached, the Mishnah says, "Oh, you probably put them both in the mikvah already on the 13th, so for the 14th they would be tahar." Lenient opinion. The Brisa says the opposite. If you find the knife attached to the cleaver, then maybe the knife wasn't toiveled either, and you have to wait for the knife. If you find, well, not you have to wait. You have to put it in the mikveh if you find it on the 14th. Well, they're probably both tamei, and you were taking them to the mikveh. The question is, would you take them in the mikveh that it should be ready for the sakin to be used, which was on the 14th, or would you take them to the mikveh to be ready for the kupitz to be used, which was on the 15th? They didn't use the kupitz on the 14th. So which one would be the primary one? That's a difference between the Mishnah and the Brisa. Okay, we have a new Mishnah, halacha beis. There's levels of tumah. There's something called an ava tumah, a father of tumah. A father of tumah can give off tumah to other things, people, food, anything. Then there's a vlada tumah that's became tumah from the ava tumah, and that can't give off tumah to vessels or people biblically, but it can still give over tumah to food. Okay, so it's more lenient. And the question here that we're going to have in the Gemara is, which type of vlada tumah are we talking about? Are we talking about a rabbinic decree vlada tumah, or like, for example, liquid? All liquid is considered a vlada tumah. Mashkin, or the hands, the touch liquid. Or are we talking about actually a biblical vlada tumah? That's the Gemara is going to argue about. But meanwhile, here we're talking about the pareichas. Pareichas is the curtain that probably is the curtain that divides the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Kodesh. They had two of them in the second base of Mikdash because the wall was too high. They couldn't have a 40 amma wall, a 40 amma tall wall that was only 1 amma thick. That was the area that was allotted to the wall. It was, it was such a tall wall needed to be wider, and they didn't have more space. There was restrictions on how much space they could use for the wall, so they made a curtain instead. So that curtain, if it becomes tummy with the vlad hatuma, the secondary tumah, so matbil neisbitnim, they take it to the mikveh inside, even though it's tummy. You'd say, oh, take it out of the base of mikdash. No, it's allowed to be there. Machnis neismiyad, and they right away put it back up, and they don't have to wait for nightfall. It's a lower level of tumah. But let's say it became tummy with an avatama. Oh, this is serious. A sheretz. So matbila naisa bachutz. You have to take it to the mikveh outside. And then they would hang it up on the chel, was in the area outside the temple. Because it had to wait for Harav Shemesh before you could bring it back in. And im haisa chadash, if it was new, they would also like to show it off if it was new. So they would put it on the platform. It was like a colonnade that was there, and they would hang it up there so everyone could see how nice it is. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Reb Shimon ben Askan. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says in the name of Reb Shimon, the son of the Sagan. Sagan means that he was the second Kayin Gadol. Pareiches avei tefach. It was a tefach thick. It was a big like carpet. The carpets, the oriental rugs. This is a fat one. It's a tefach. According to the Chazon Ish, it's 4 inches thick. Could be smaller than that, according to Chaim. No, but it's pretty thick. Al shivim b'shtayim nimin ereges. It was woven on a 72 strand loom, I guess. Al kol nima v'nima chavta lechutin, and each strand was made out of 24 strands. What do they call it? 24. What do they call it? When they talk about the material, they use like a word to say how many. No. What is it? POY?
PLY, isn't that the word?
Ply. 24 ply. Yeah, maybe that's the word that they use. I'm sorry? Okay. So, yeah, 24 ply. That's why they invented the magnifying glasses, to be able to look at the quality of the material. Right? That was Van Leeuwenhoek. Right? He invented the eyepiece to look at the quality of the cloth. Okay, so Arka Mem Amma, it was 40 amas long. Barach B'chap Amma was 20 amas wide. It was made from 10,000 probably coins. That's what it was made. It doesn't tell us. There's another pshat over here. It was made by 82 girls that would do the weaving. That's Riboy doesn't mean 10,000. Riboy could also mean a girl. So Vishtayim Oisim B'chal Shana, they would make 2 a year. V'shol Shmiyas Kainim at Vilnes, it would take 300 Kainim to put it in the mikvah. Yeah, it's huge. You ever see how they do carpet, oriental carpet? You know, they come to your house, 2-3 guys, they roll it up, they take it, and they bring it back clean. So anyway, it's a big job. When they wash it, it takes like a week or 2 just to dry. You know, they hang it up. It must weigh a ton when it's wet. So okay. Ilu amar chut. If it said chut, that would mean echad. That would mean just 1 ply. Kafel, if it says doubled, that would be shtayim. Shazar, if it means twisted, if it says twisted, that would be 3 ply. Mashzar, that would be also means twisted. That would mean 6. Now, arba, the problem is that it's 6 ply, but how many materials were used? There were 4 materials that were used. There was tcheles, argaman, tilash, shani, and sheish. Blue wool, purple wool, scarlet wool, and linen. So 6. It was each one was 6 ply. That times 4 types. That would be 24. That's where we get it. Mikan. That's from Barba. Tani, however, the Brisa says Shleishim V'Shtayim. It says that it was 32. So Ilo Amar Chut, we go through this. If it said just a string, then it would be Echad. That would be 1 ply. Kafel is Lishnayim. That would be 2. Shazar is Larba. Mashlar is Lishmaina. Oh, we got it already. If it said Mashlar instead of 6, it would be 8. And we have 4 types. Arba, because there's 4 types, Mikana, Klasim V'Train, then obviously it's 32. 4 times 8. Tana Arba Mishmaina. But some say there's a brisa that says that it was 48 ply. Ilu Amar Chotecha, then it would be Echad. Kafel Lishnayim. Kliya, we added another one. Kliya means braided, then it would be 3. Shazar, if it's twisted, it would be 6. Mashzar is Lishnei Masa. Mashzar twisted is 12. Arba, the fact that there's 4 different types. Mikan ha'arba metamnaya. So 12 times 4 is 48. Kasav echad maisi reikim. One pasuk says that it was made embroidered. Kasav echad maisi chayshim. Another one says it was made by a craftsman. Maisi reikim. What is maisi reikim? That's parts of echad. That has the face on one side. You see, there's an image on one side. Maisi chayshim v'shnei partzufos. A craftsman is that it has a face on each side. You look at each side of this curtain and you can see a different image. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia, however, there's a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia that's very common for them to argue in Medrash. One said that when it says the embroiderer's work, that means that there was a lion on each side. When it says craftsman's work, that means that it's a lion on one side and the other side had nothing. Like a trick. How do they do that? Harana Amar, the other one says, when it says embroiderers, arimikan v'chalak mikan. No, that means that it's a lion on one side and a craftsman on the other. It's a lion on one side and a nesher is a eagle, and an eagle on the other side. Yeah, I was saw a video of this rabbi in London that was describing the weaving that was forbidden on Shabbos. I forgot his name. He had a great personality, and he was talking about this, and he was showing bloom and thing. And anyway, he says that there's a Rashi. Rashi says that how did he get an image on both sides? So Rashi says it was a miracle. So he says, well, I figured it out how to do it, and I'll be taking kvitlach at the end of the shir. Anyway. Okay. 82,000, 10,000 coins it was made. It says chulu. The usually, at least in the Gemara Tamid, the guzma, the exaggeration was that it took 300 kayanim to taival it. That's an exaggeration. Taman tanin pamim hayalek shalshmeis kur. There's another mission that says that the tapuach, which is the pile, the heap of ashes on the Mizbeach had 300 kur on it, that's also an exaggeration. We learned this in Masechet Tamid. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabban b'shem Shmuel Guzma. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Bun in the name of Shmuel says that this is an exaggeration. When we learned Tamid, we spoke about the Maral that says that it's only an exaggeration for us, because just like we have a sundial that it moves, like the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, that it moves thousands of miles in the sky, but over here it just moves a little bit. So too, the Torah speaks about much higher things in our world. So over there, that's actually how accurate it is, and over here it's an exaggeration. For us it's an exaggeration, but over there it's the reality. So the Torah is not just talking about in our world; it's talking about in higher worlds also. You follow? Okay. Another Mishnah. Basa kachim shenitma bein ba'avatama bein b'vladatama bein b'fnim bein b'chutz. B'sham yemra kol yisaref b'fnim chutz mishnitma ba'avatama b'chutz. Flesh from a sacrifice that became impure. Where is it burned? So the first opinion here says we don't care. This Beishamai's opinion, if it became tummy with an avatama or a vladatama, whether it became tummy inside or tummy outside, it's always burnt inside, with the exception of the one case of that it became tummy with an avatama outside. We don't bring it back in to burn it. And it's the worst case that stays outside. All other cases we burn it inside. Bissel says no. Hakol yisaref b'chutz. Everything is burnt outside. Chutz mishnitma b'vladatama b'fnim. Unless the most lenient of all cases, which is it was a secondary tumah and it became tummy inside, that will burn inside. But any other case, any possible problematic impurity, we take it outside to burn. And if it was tummy outside, for sure. Rabbi Lezer mishnitma b'avatama bein b'fnim bein b'chutz yisaref b'chutz. Shnitma v'adatam bein b'chutz bein b'fnim yisaref b'fnim. Rabbi Lezer says the defining criteria is if it's an avatama or a vladatama, the father of impurity or an offspring. If it's a father of impurity, then it's outside. If it's an offspring of impurity, means a secondary impurity, then it's inside. Rabbi Akiva says the defining criteria is where it became tummy, not how it became tummy, but where. If it became tummy outside, then it's burnt outside. If it became tummy inside, then we burn it inside, no matter what type of tummy it is. Bar Kapara says that when the Mishnah we're discussing an avatama and a vladatama, the avatama we mean that it became tummy deraisa, and vladatama we're talking about that it was only a rabbinic tama, and that's why we have this machlekes. Rabbi Yochanan Amar bein zeh dvar Torah. Rabbi Yochanan says no. The machlekes is not because of rabbinic or biblical. The machlekes is because they're both biblical, and just the difference is if it's a avatama or a vladatama. That's the difference. If it's a first degree or if it's a second degree tama. There's a problem with what Rabbi Yochanan's view, according to Beis Shammai. And the problem is like this. Beis Shammai's opinion was that everything gets burnt inside, except for the one worst case, which was burnt outside, which that was an avatama that became tummy outside, stays outside. Question is like this. Rabbi Yochanan says everything is deraisa. The Beis Shammai yemra kol yisaref b'fnim chutz mishnit b'avatam b'chutz. The question is, ma bein avatam b'chutz, ma bein vladatam b'chutz, zeh v'zeh leidvar Torah. Everything is biblical. Why are you bringing it inside if it's biblically impure? According to Rabbi Yochanan. If it's rabbinic impurity, we can see the distinction. But over here, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's biblically impure. Why, according to Beis Shammai, would you bring it inside to burn it inside the temple? And the truth is that on Beis Hillel, it's also a question. The Beis Hillel, Beis Hillel holds everything is burnt outside, except for the one case, the most lenient case, where it became tummy with a vladatama inside. The question is, according to Rabbi Yochanan, what's a vladatama? It's also biblically impure. Ma bein vladatama b'fnim, ma bein avatama b'fnim. Is it not a biblical impurity? Why don't you take it outside just like you did with everything else? The Rabbanan, because of this, did not deliberate on Rabbi Yochanan's view. They chose to deliberate on Bar Kapara's view. Doesn't mean that they have it settled. They still have questions, but the questions are a little lighter. Kasha the Bar Kapara al the Beis Shammai, there's a problem with Bar Kapara as well. Beis Shammai Yamra Kol Yisaref B'Pnim Chutz Mishnat B'Vadatim B'Chutz. Beis Shammai says everything is burnt inside except for the avatama that became tummy outside. Ma bein avatama bein b'chutz bein b'mipnim zev zalei devar Torah. If it's an avatama, what's the difference if it was outside or inside? Both of them are biblical. Why don't you take it outside? If you hold that an avatama has to be burnt outside, so take it an avatama that became impure inside, take it out to burn it. Begin the Rabbi Akiva Amar Makom Tamasei Shamtei Sreifasei. Well, that has to do with Rabbi Akiva's view that it has to do with the location that it became tamei. So if you mix the two together, we can get a pshat that we don't bring it in because it's an avatama, but you also don't have to bring it out even though it's an avatama because Rabbi Akiva holds that you burn it in its location. It's not a question on Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel Amar Kol Yisaref B'Chutz Chutz Mishnat Nitma V'Ladatama B'Fnim. Why are we making a distinction in saying that a vladatama that was inside, you can leave it inside? A vladatama that's outside, why don't you bring it inside? If it's only rabbinic, so what's the problem? It says, begin the Reb Shimon Amar. This has to do with the opinion of Reb Shimon. I don't think we know where this is. Once something is outside, you don't bring it in. That's what we're saying. He holds that if he touches something, you don't bring it in. If the Mitzvah touches something, you don't bring it in. So here also, even though it's only a blada tumah, you don't bring it into the temple. Okay, let's do this.